Appreciate the opportunity to be before you today and talk a bit about the Cosumnes Preserve. I think most of you are probably familiar with it. Hundreds of thousands of people drive by it on a daily basis, and it is somewhat taken for granted. I think, as Robin noted, it is really an inspiring example of what can begin with a small idea and a few hundred acres that has caught the attention of both state and federal agencies as an invaluable multiple objective resource conservation partnership. And there's active canoeing on a regular basis at the preserve when we have water in the river. It's one of the most active bird watching reserve areas in the region, and it is really a model for ongoing interagency collaboration between the Bureau of Land Management, the State Lands Commission, and multiple private entities. UC Davis has played an ongoing role in scientific monitoring at the preserve for multiple habitat values. And in addition to ongoing partnerships with Ducks Unlimited, the California Waterfowl Association, Point Blue, Audubon, Friends of Sandhill Cranes, we have engaged from the beginning and really grown that model of integrating multiple value resource monitoring, resource management, and restoration. And I think what I'd like to talk to you about today is really sort of what happens next at the preserve and some of the challenges that I think the Council can be helpful in building consensus in looking to the future. We have identified in our scientific assessment that the preserve really has the opportunity to be kind of the eastern hub of the central delta for, again, multiple value habitats, as well as, frankly, an important resource for the region in serving as a hub to open up the northern delta more to public access, to bicycling, to hiking, bird watching on an even greater basis than it is today. One of the projects that kind of became our takeoff point with respect to an expanded role for restoration programs there was a part of the President's Economic Recovery Program, the ARA program grants. And we applied for a program to do a 861-acre riparian and wetland restoration project called the Oneto-Dernier Project. And it's very exciting. It's an opportunity to integrate multiple values and look at the potential for sustainable habitat in the valley. And that was 2009. In 2009, we hoped that we would be planting in the summer of 2011 and kind of bringing back native riparian vegetation there. Well, now we're approaching summer of 2013, and we still don't have the permits for that. And I think it's a lesson, I think, for our organization that we need some help. We need some agency recognition of the complexities of the restoration permitting process and the layers of that. We are now certainly hundreds of thousands of dollars deeper into investment than we ever would have imagined for air quality permitting tied to the project, the modeling that needs to be done for restoration, and the multiple layers that have to be undertaken. And we are not a small non-governmental organization. We do a lot of this. We've done it from the top of the Sacramento River watershed into the Delta. And so I think it's unrealistic if we expect the path for multi-habitat public engagement, as Robin has noted, involvement in this really strong consensus-based model that this is the right place to do it. It's the right kind of habitat design. And yet, three and a half years later, we're still in the permit process for a relatively small habitat restoration project that we just can't get over the line. And I'm optimistic that if I was here a year from now, I would say we will have you all out for a planting in summer 2014. But I don't think we're going to get there. It's fraught with challenge, and I just wish that we could draw more attention to the complexities of the permitting process. And I think that if we could have the council's attention as a forum in which to elevate those issues, that would be really important for us. I think the second issue is one that's complicated for non-governmental partners leading up these kinds of projects, and it is what level of liability is a non-governmental entity prepared to absorb and carry when they are creating wetland habitat, and all of the hydrologic modeling suggests that there is flood benefit to the project, that there is general public buy-in. But is the NGO expected to carry that property indefinitely, or can we find a path that is predictable and inclusive and that really provides a role for the Delta Conservancy to be a long-term takeout partner? And again, I think that would be beneficial for the integration of recreational values, multiple habitat values for avian and terrestrial species as well as aquatic species, and the ability to kind of look beyond these projects as simply narrow interest, single habitat elements that might be benefiting either someone's mitigation requirement or another party's kind of narrow permitting needs. And I think these projects, as Robin has noted in the bypass, are much more than that. They truly become an extraordinary public resource when you give them time to develop. But there needs to be a trajectory in which non-governmental organizations can have more predictability in delivering those properties to long-term management by the state of California. And really the third area that I'd like to draw your attention to as a critical need in the process, frankly, is the ability to have an endowment that recognizes if we're taking some of these lands out of agricultural production, which has been a revenue stream for the properties, but is no longer viable once they're converted to habitat, then there has to be some offsetting economic value that's injected into the project to provide some basis for ongoing operations, management, maintenance, to sustain those habitat values, to sustain levee conditions and the like. And so, those are three really important long-term challenges that we confront in these partnerships. At Cosumnes, there may be an increasingly important public agency role for the Bureau of Land Management, but if they're here today, I think they would tell you that there isn't a lot of appetite in the federal agencies to take on additional land management responsibilities. So as we look to the future, it is really how do we maintain these stewardship values consistent with a broader vision for the Delta. And I think we take great pride, as Robin does, in really having a project here that has incredible community buy-in, that has involved multiple stakeholders for many years, that has a great public access program, brings a lot of outdoor education opportunities to area youth. And yet we need to get around the corner. And I think in the bigger picture, if you step back and you look at Cosumnes, you also see sort of a continuing land use management challenge, as in southern Sacramento County and San Joaquin County. And frankly, the continued growth of Elk Grove has significant implications for protecting the natural resource values that we see as critical to the mission, and this, again, the broad community buy-in in the natural resource and recreational values that are present at the Cosumnes Reserve. And The impacts begin with sort of the obvious encroachment of growth. Many of you are familiar with the Mustang Airport project that came along a couple of years ago. Direct threat to migratory birds, sandhill cranes, and others that rely on the preserve. And additionally, groundwater. As we continue to tap groundwater resources to meet human needs, what we're seeing is that we're drying up the ecosystem. And frankly, last year the Cosumnes went dry at the beginning of June. And so that's happening earlier and earlier as each year goes by. And so there has to be a need, or there's a clear need for integrated water management and better understanding of what's happening in the basin in order to protect the basic natural resource values that we set out to achieve when the vision for the Cosumnes Reserve was launched in 1984. So those are, I think, some of the big picture issues that we're looking at and looking around the corner at the challenges in how does this preserve become a model for greater integration of multiple values for habitat, for flood protection, for public access to these special places that surround Sacramento. So thank you for your time today.
Randy? Oh.
Yeah.
Jay, the diminishing amount of water in the Cosumnes for environmental